Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I love the excitement. Anyone want to talk some sports? We have sports fans in the audience. I'm super excited because collectively amongst us, right, the five of us have 5 world championships. Is that right? We have 2 gold. Listen to what we've accomplished. So we're super excited to be here today. So we've also been informed that we are the tallest panel. So, so we have that too. Yeah, including you, Daryl, including you.
So bring the average down a little bit.
Super excited to be here today to talk to you guys a little bit about the intersection of sports and brands. Obviously, it's a big piece of the sports world and actually of the brand world, and I'm really excited to have this group here to talk a little bit about today. Well, I thought it'd be fun, though, to kick off with a little bit, if you guys are okay with it. I'd love it if we just share a little bit of what's something that folks in the room don't know about you? What's a nice little tidbit that folks in the room would never guess? Joe, what's something that folks wouldn't know?
I guess for the folks that don't already know me, I grew up in the Northwest, in a small town in central Washington.
Washington? Any Washington?
Yeah, any Washington folks out here? Town of 4,000 people. So, yeah, very, very small town. The Barclays Center holds about 17,000, so you get my entire town to a game at the Barclays Center.
Soon, right?
Yeah,
right.
It's one of these days.
Let's see. My mom is one of 12. I have 75 first cousins. I have a 1-year-old. So any moms in here, if my phone goes off, you know what time it is. I need to answer it. That's pretty much about it.
Excellent. Marcy.
Well, I thought I'd bring the connection to the panel here. I was a walk-on at UConn, and Swin and I were actually roommates. I think you would probably agree, we made better teammates than we did roommates. Very different ideas of temperature in the room, for one. But I thought that would be a fun little fact for you guys to know about us.
Yeah. I love it.
Well, I can one-up Marcy. I was a walk-on at an NAIA school, and that's a big feat to do. Then also at 10 years old, I knew exactly what I wanted to be, and I can do that until I die. I wanted to be the greatest husband and dad in the world.
There you go.
My parents got divorced, and that was my dream.
Oh, no, wait, I thought I was that. No?
You are.
I am. Good. I love it. So good. So let's talk sports. Let's talk brands. Swin, why don't we start with you? One of the interesting things for me, anyway, about being an athlete and a professional athlete is you are a walking brand, right? How did you think about, and how do you think about that? Building that brand, establishing that brand, nurturing that brand as an athlete and as an individual?
Well, for me, when I came into the WNBA in 2002, I was ahead of my time somewhat because I understood what it meant to be an athlete and to also have a brand. I had great mentors, and I have to give a lot of credit to them. So understanding what I was wearing, the shoes I was wearing, how I was conducting myself. When we went to meetings, whether it was at the league office, whether it was with sponsors, I always made sure I was presenting my best self of who I was and who my brand was. And I always had the mindset of being the CEO of me and carrying myself as a business. And a lot of times I got flack for that early on, where it was like, you're too worried about your brand, or you're too worried about this, and just focus on basketball. Fast forward a decade later, and now there's money in you having your own personal brand. There's money in what's on your feet. What are you wearing? There's money in you being able to step out, whether it's a GQ, a fashion week, whatever the case may be, and brands are wanting to know, are you an influencer? So I'm happy to see that more athletes are taking ownership of that and understanding that they can definitely be able to monetize that if they pay attention to if their brand coincides with what the league is, and then you kind of bring it full circle. So it's really a 360 approach, and I think more athletes are really starting to focus in on that.
I love it. Joe, how do you think about your brand? Have you thought about it? I mean, being a relative newcomer, I think, compared to a lot of folks, how do you think about your brand?
Yeah, Swin hit it on the head, just the fact that how much it's changed. So I'm going into my 5th year in the NBA, and even how much it's changed, I guess, in that short period of time. The one example that I kind of always think about in terms of brand and your relationship to the team and you focusing on trying to be the CEO of yourself is when I was in Cleveland, I happened to be teammates with LeBron James. And
who's that?
and while we were,
he was teammates with Joey.
yeah, that's what he should be saying.
Yeah.
But while I was there, I just noticed, obviously he's definitely an anomaly in the sense of his relationship with the brand, but the loyalty that is amongst the NBA, and I think everybody can attest to this, is that obviously there is, a line there where, you're going to sacrifice and do what you have to take for the team and for the betterment of the team. But at the end of the day, it's very much a business and it's very cutthroat. And a lot of the loyalty lies in your relationship with the brands. So, for example, my rookie year, LeBron, I think at that time had just signed on a lifetime deal with Nike. And a lot of his loyalty was with the swoosh. And I think you kind of seen that more and more with people today, just their relationships with brands.
Daryl, how is it different? I mean, I know you
we
played very recently.
We have a generation gap here. So I graduated high school in '78.
Yeah.
So, for me, I wasn't really interested, and this is not to knock what you said, but I wasn't trying to build a brand for business. I was trying to build a life. And my business card says selling the historic integrity of a brand. But I wasn't trying to build a brand, I was trying to live a life. And I am, as I've told you earlier, I'm the entirety of myself. I'm a dad, a husband, I'm a Hall of Famer, I have youth programs. So I'm all of those things. And so that becomes, everybody's a brand. It's like everybody's a role model. Unless you're dead, you're modeling something.
Yep.
And so for me, it was a little bit different in that, in those generations, in those times, there were less things to endorse. There were less media outlets to cover you. There were, I know people don't like this name, but O.J. Simpson, one of the only guys who's doing things in the African-American community, so way back when. So it's a different world today, and I think it's a better world, and it's a more open world, and you have to be prepared for it, as you said, Swin said. But for me, I wasn't really focusing on that, but at the end of the day, I think that I became a value to, for example, last year I had, for the group that I work with in my youth program, it was about what we call earned media, and it was according to the group that worked with us, it was about 70 million impressions equated to about $6 or $7 million. That happens through earned media without the company even paying when you are a Hall of Famer, you are a 20-year NFL player. So it's been a unique circle to follow over these last 30 years.
Yep.
So,
I have a question. Do you envy, folks like Joe who are playing, professional sports today and the opportunities he has? Or are you glad that it was simpler back when you were?
No, I'm grateful for what I've had, because if I did that, then the guys prior to me. So it's all a blessing, that we continue to move forward and progress as a people, as sports, as a nation. So no, not at all. No envy at all.
I love it. Marcy, so at Google, right? So having been a former athlete, or I shouldn't say former, should I? So an athlete yourself.
These days, yes.
Yeah. and working at Google, how do you think about the intersection? How does Google think about the intersection of brand and sports and what you do there and what you're trying to accomplish with that?
Well, I think just kind of if we want to do the rewind a little bit and think about when I was in school, and when I was first in my career as a marketer, I started out, everyone's going to laugh at this one, but radio sports sponsorship sales was a little bit different than it is now. And I think when at that stage in the game, when you look at brand sponsorships and how brand was integrating with sports, it was for the most part in stadium, right? So you're looking at how many people can I reach in stadium, and then with the extension of traditional media such as TV, radio, maybe like out of home, there was the appointment listening, appointment viewing, and your brand could expand outside of just the stadium. And fast forward, I guess now Google just turned 20 last month, and we really have limitless opportunity for brands, meaning personal brands like personal players, as well as leagues, as well as companies to obviously connect on a whole different level. And I think what you guys, the three of you, just kind of talked about was being able to identify what your personal brand is, I should say, and we live in a different world now where we can have that one-to-one connection with sports fans, with consumers, right? And I think a lot of what we're doing at Google is hopefully helping to provide that opportunity for brands and sports alike to be able to connect with their audience on that one-to-one basis, whether and inclusive of social media platforms, et cetera, YouTube being one of them. But I think that that's sort of the world that we live in now, and it's unique in that you can really make that intimate connection that I don't think exist 20 years ago.
So if you think about it from a consumer brand perspective or a large brand perspective, when you're looking to think about partnerships, either with athletes or with sports organizations, things like that, what do you look for in those relationships? What is Google trying to get out of those relationships?
Sure. So from my particular perspective, I work with the sports leagues on more of the their external marketing and ad business, if you will, ad side of the house for Google. But overall, we have a lot of different relationships with the leagues and with brands alike. So I think what Google was founded on was bringing the best user experience and providing the most information to those users. So whenever we are partnering with brands particularly, we want to make sure that we always have the user first and that we're also providing them, obviously, the opportunity to reach whatever goals that they have set as it relates to their marketing needs. That's specific to marketing, to advertising, but there's a whole host of other areas. I mean, I feel like we could be here forever talking specifically about the different entities, whether it be YouTube TV or Google Home, et cetera. But I think we're always looking for that value exchange with partners and making sure that it makes sense for all those involved and that there is that value exchange.
So let me turn it around on you guys. So as you as athletes, right, and you as brands, when think about connecting with consumer brands, what are you looking for as you sort of think about how to connect your brand to a consumer brand from the other side of that, on the other side of the table? What's important to you in those relationships?
Well, I can tell you right now from a personal standpoint, obviously being 2 years retired and working with current athletes right now, we are living in an era where the idea of an athlete having to shut up and play or shut up and dribble no longer exists. This is an era now where athletes are taking not only responsibility for what they do on the court, but also off the court. And having a platform, I think, which Marcy said, it's very easy for players to articulate, to get out, whether it's social media, whether it's through partnerships, what their opinions and feelings are. And so I think what we're seeing now is more players wanting to have those authentic connections with sponsors that have somewhat of a moral compass, where you don't have to necessarily agree, but you have certain things that they look for, whether it's diversity, whether it's inclusion. Some of those things really matter to athletes more and more, or that you're giving back, you're philanthropic. Those things are what you're looking at when you're sitting at the table having to negotiate. It's no longer just cut me a check and I'm going to wear your brand and that's it. I think athletes are becoming more business savvy, if you will.
And they make themselves more valuable to those brands in that way, right? When they have more followers, et cetera.
That's interesting too, because the days of the football card and sign an autograph, a lot of that's changed, and a lot of times the fans are, over time, it's been hard for them to embrace you as a business person and not just see you as an athlete. And I think that we're kind of getting over the top of that. And I think for me, I'm an associate athletic director at George Mason University, and I'm in development as well. And talking about value, when we want to partner with a company or an organization, we have to protect our students, our student athletes, and our students as a whole. So that brand has to have on the back of their card selling the historic integrity of a brand too, so that we're not affecting ourselves. And so even in the different issues that's facing us today in athletics, everything you do, we're all in it together. And so you do have to be very responsible if you're going to take and be the CEO of yourself. That's where the issue happens. That's that line that everybody's not mature and ready to walk. And so again, for myself, I think just my life, who I am, presents itself. I can go anywhere. I can be a part of anybody's anything because I'm clean. I'm not envious. I'm not going to, you can sleep at night when I present myself, and I'm not saying this for a commercial for myself, but that's important, I think, and particularly as a grandfather, 11 times.
No way.
Yeah. So I've got 4 and 3 are married, and they're punching them out, and I'm excited. But that's super important for grandpa.
Absolutely.
In terms of how my youngsters will see, and they will see, and they will appreciate. And we have to be responsible. Again, if you're going to be the CEO of yourself, then you better be a good CEO of yourself because there's going to be consequences.
Well, I think also I think it's not so much, when people hear that saying of like being the CEO of you, it's not so much where there's like a hard line where it's like I'm coming in, it's strictly about business, like this is what I want, demanding. It's just mostly taking more responsibility of what you're doing, your business, like your overall business, whether it's the philanthropic arm, the business arm, being the team captain. I mean, there's so many things. I tell people this in business all the time. Some of the best workers and people, employees, are former athletes, and no disrespect to anybody, and it's not professional athletes, it's just if you worked on a team, you understand what it takes to win. You understand what you have to sacrifice. And it's
half of
nothing,
the audience agree.
And it's, you know, and it's nothing, it's not, and people think, well, or do you mean at a collegiate level, at this level? I'm like, no, just in general. I tell people all the time, get your kids involved in sports. Get them off of social media and the digital things, because the lessons that you're going to learn, they're going to help you in business. Like a lot of the things that I apply in business now, and I apply being in the front office, or if I'm consulting and doing something with the MBA for social responsibility, a lot of that stems from what I've learned on a team and how you build to win.
I love it.
I agree with
love
that.
it. Something Swin said I think was really interesting to me, and Joe, I'm curious your thoughts about this. This idea of as you think about yourself and as a brand, as you think about partners and sponsors and things like that for you personally, Swin talked about that being a two-way street. It's no longer just about cutting a check, it's about supporting each other. Yeah. How do you think about that as you think about connecting yourself and thinking about the types of things you get involved in?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think of a lot of different athletes, and even, for myself, being a relatively younger in the scale of terms of years of service and my opportunities that I've been presented with, there's a lot of mentors and role models that you can look to and see how they have handled themselves. And, I look at someone like Chris Long, for example, where he's more philanthropic, and that's his interest, and those are the brands that he wants to be associated with. I have some teammates that might be into fashion, or it's whatever your interests are aligned with. You can kind of be specific as to which brands you want to be associated with. It's not just taking every opportunity that comes your way. It's kind of figuring out what culturally and philosophically you're aligned with, and I think it's just much easier to be able to identify that and see that with brands now than it ever has been before.
Yeah, that authenticity thing is important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I love it. So let's talk about that for a minute, authenticity, right? As you think about your brands and you think about what you stand for. Daryl, you've talked a little bit about sort of how you live your life, and that feels like it's a big part of your brand. How important is authenticity to your brand and demonstrating that you live it and things like that?
Oh, that is the most important thing. I mean, the fact that you're genuine, people can sense that, and when you're passionate about the things that you represent, people can feel that, you can see that, and I think, no matter, like I said, whatever your interests are aligned, I think just that specificity and being able to figure out, culturally, philosophically, where you want to be aligned. There's going to be passion rooted in that, and there's going to be authenticity, and you're going to be much more genuine about what you're supporting, and it's just going to be beneficial, more mutually beneficial.
Mm-hmm. I think it should represent you. I think I was telling you earlier that there was a company that reached out to me to be the face of being responsible in drinking. Well, I don't really drink,
right? And
it had a sponsor associated with it, so that you can't have them both. I can't say be responsible drinking. Oh, but I don't drink.
Yeah.
So it was gonna be but again, I think that, and I think to your point about the generations, I think this generation are way more conscientious and way more responsible in that. Maybe not just because they want to be responsible, but they just this generation don't do what they don't want to do.
Have you talked to any millennials? You've been
Grandpa
to
is
some
talking
millennials.
today. They're not going to do it, and that's good in many cases. In a lot of cases.
Did you feel back when you were a player that you were forced to do things or endorse
Not me,
things?
because I didn't do anything. I should be born in this generation. But no, yeah, you saw a lot of people doing things like, wow, that's opposite of what you think of this person. Maybe they did it for the money or the pressure or whatever, but I think this generation does a better job at it. Yeah. But I think it's super important when you're talking about your brand. And that's why also I think that the brand and the, what do you call it, the talent or, the athlete, they have to be in sync. Because if they're not, it could hurt not only the brand, the individual, and the organization individuals with, that athlete's team. So you got to be very, I'm telling you, it's a serious deal today.
Really agree with that, Marcy?
I mean, I would say twofold. One, as it relates to athletes, is that authenticity makes, gives you a loyal following, right? And that makes you more marketable. On the flip side, from like a brand's perspective in marketing, I would say that you really want to make sure that you I always think about the Maya Angelou quote of people are going to remember how you made them feel, not what you said. And when brands make you evoke emotion and make you feel connected to them, whether it be through the athletes that they are sponsoring or through their own marketing efforts, that authenticity, I think, really rings true, especially at a time like today, whether it be around specific social issues or showing that your brand is like standing for something. With the generations that, the younger generations, I think that's really important right now. Specifically.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Marcy was saying, last year when I first retired and came into the front office with the New York Liberty, I was excited because Isaiah Thomas, who brought me on, who was the president of the team, gave me kind of free reign to develop and do some things that I had been hoping that we would do the whole time as I was a player. You're wishing, you're working with the union, you're like, okay, we need to be doing this as a league, doing that, and your suggestions, you know how it goes, Joe, just falls like it's just dead. It's dead. Nobody's listening. They hear you, but they didn't really hear you. So when I came in last year, one of the things that I said is, we're going to stop just scheduling appearances, because a lot of times, they'll schedule a bunch of appearances, and then it's like, let's plug in athletes. Well, that does a disservice to the brand, and it does a disservice to the athlete, because if you have an athlete that's coming off a back-to-back and they're not really passionate about this cause and they have to show up, then it makes a bad experience for them, bad experience for the brand, and a bad experience for all the fans that are there. So I started out at the beginning of the year saying, let's do our research, let's do our due diligence, let's find out what each and every athlete cares about. Let's find out what their parents are doing. Is there somebody in their family that's sick? Do you care about breast cancer? Do you care about this? Do you care about that? So we did this whole thing. What are some of the brands that you purchase right now, and what are some of the brands that you would like to work with? So we did this whole full-blown out plan and said, we're going to go with passion points. And we call this passion points because I thought it was important that, after a back-to-back game, it has to be something I want to do on my day off for me to show up. And we had buy-in completely across the board. And last year, we just swept all of the WNBA community outreach awards, because our players, they showed up, they cared, they were engaged, and it was about things that they really wanted to show up for. And I think a lot of times it comes down to the research. You can't get to an authentic point until you know the research and be able to partner that with what your mission is. And a lot of time brands, they'll go out there, and I've seen this, they'll be on social media, and then the Twitter handle is saying one thing, but your brand's over here sponsoring somebody that's doing something else, and everybody sees that. So I think we're in a day and age now where you have to be sure it's exactly who you are and who you want to be and what you're representing.
Very good.
Yeah, definitely.
At the risk of straying into a little bit of a controversial territory, I'm curious, Swin, just from your perspective. I mean, obviously, more and more athletes are using their brand not just for themselves, not just to make money, but for the causes that they care about. And those causes are often not, a little bit controversial, depending on which one. And I'm curious, from your perspective, having been a player, right, and having particular causes, and now being in the front office, the sort of balance that's there in terms of managing a team brand in those situations versus a personal brand, how you think about those things. Has your perspective changed at all? Or?
My perspective changed a little.
Yeah.
Just because there may have been a few things that would come up that I already had a relationship with the players. So even if it may have been something that they weren't in love with, I was able to sit down and explain to them from a business perspective why we needed to do this, why it was important to have them engaged because they are the face of the franchise, and they respected the fact that we brought them to the table and engaged with them. It wasn't you need to show up for this as an appearance. I believe in having that open dialogue that creates better relationships and better buy-in.
Yep. Daryl, you and I were talking in the back a little bit about this idea of controversy and social causes, which you were explaining back, when you played, there wasn't as much of that. There was Muhammad Ali, a little bit of that there.
That's before me.
Yeah.
Daryl's like, don't try to date me, Pete. Don't date me, Pete.
All right.
I'm a baby boomer, but I'm in the middle of that.
How about Kareem? Kareem, right?
Yeah. We're gonna get there.
Right, cool.
So that wasn't, you're right. During my career, the Iraq War and all that stuff, it wasn't as much. It wasn't like this, and obviously, social media was not in a play as much as well at the time. So we kind of cruised through from that standpoint. But I think that from a local standpoint, I think people were more, because as I said before, less media outlets. But in those times, as what Swin was saying, we were really a part of our community. Mm-hmm. And if you go back to pre-free agency, when a player, I played 20 years for one team, but I was in the free agency. I was on the strike, to get free agency. Remember when Reggie White left Philadelphia, went out to Green Bay. But, prior to that, it was the old, bring your kids to the ballpark, get an autograph, nobody leaves, unless you get traded. People stayed with their teams forever, and you really became a part of that community. Yeah. You wasn't the next year playing in the other team's jersey, and so it was a different world during that time. So I can't say that I had as much.
Are you excited about the fact that we have a lot of athletes today who are really standing up for these causes and especially in the NFL, making waves around things they believe in?
I think that it's all of our athletes and everybody else's response. This is our world. This is our country. I think everybody should have a voice. And if your voice to whom much is given, much is required. If you have a bigger voice, then you certainly should be speaking, but it doesn't mean you with a smaller voice shouldn't speak. I think that nobody should stop anybody from speaking and saying, I'm using my platform. Well, if I use it to promote or if I use it to support you, I should be able to use it just like you use it. And I think I have to agree with that 100%, that athletes should be able to use that platform for good and have their voices.
Excited about it? Good.
Well, I think just as the evolution of kind of where we are today is that celebrities and athletes always had extra pressure, if you will, or responsibility for certain things. But I think now we live in a world where everybody really truly does have a voice. And because you're an athlete or a celebrity, then you have the ability to use that, I think, and I should say amplify that much more so than, say, 15, 20 years ago. Right?
In my now 35 years from the time I was a rookie, I think, I created Youth Life Learning Centers, which are still around about 5 states. Inner city work for youth, and it's young kids who are now adults now. And I've created Strong Youth, Strong Communities with a company called Centene. And so I'm all around the U.S., 1,300 kids 2 weeks ago in Beckley, West Virginia, 1,800 kids in Florida. So I think that that's a part of us, not only our voice on TV or whatever, but our voice in the quiet, our voice in the neighborhood, where it may not be as loud, even though, as I said earlier, about all those impressions, because we're doing radio, we're doing TV, we're doing interviews when we get to that city, and we do have Centene as a sponsor, so it does benefit them. That's not why we're doing it, but you can't get away from it. You've got to be in it. Yep. And that's what I love about the whole world that we live in today, and I love about what these young ladies and gentlemen have said, that they're in it. You guys are in it, and I love that. I think it's really important for our nation. And I'm just, I don't want to be you. I want to stay where I am.
Yeah.
But I think you guys are doing a great job. And hopefully, I've got some few more years to be in the game, too.
Still great. By the
Well,
way,
and think about those kids that are coming to those events. They know either the former players that they're meeting or whatever. They know them even more intimately than they ever could have
Because they can Google them.
Right, because of social media.
If I just have to say
And
it,
because
no,
of-
but you
right?
make a good point.
So
I'm
that's
58,
really great.
and when I go in, now I go in with the door openers.
I'm about to say,
I have on my gold jacket and
Can you-
everything. But when I get in, I take this stuff off. But I mean, they do know you
Right.
because of the medium that they're able to know you from, and so it's
I'm
special.
guessing there's a lot of people who are wondering what those are.
Yeah.
Can you explain to folks which?
So
which
in
ones which?
18, so when I got drafted, the Redskins won the Super Bowl against Miami. Some of you wasn't born. That was 1982-83. We went back in 1983-4, my first year, we lost to the Raiders. We came back with the first African-American, Doug Williams. We won against Denver in the Super Bowl. We came back with Mark Whippen, and we beat some of you Buffalo Bills fans. And we got another Super Bowl. And then when I retired, 5 years you have to be out. I went in as a first ballot Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I'm grateful for that. I have fun with this stuff, but that's not who I am. That's what I did. And I'm grateful for that. So yes, I have 2 of my Super Bowl rings and my Hall of Fame.
Love it.
I just want to say, I just want to say, I'm up here feeling some kind of way because I didn't know we were bringing out the hardware today. I played a couple things out on you, but I understand, though.
Hey, you didn't get the memo. You didn't get the memo.
To be fair, having read all your bios, I'm pretty sure you have the most hardware. You got medals.
The text message. Come on, look out for
How
your
much
girl.
hardware you have?
Look out for your girl.
Give me, really, no, tell me, because I don't know.
No, those are
No,
nothing
tell
that
me, I want
size.
to know, I want to know, I really do.
I'm like,
You don't want it.
Just do what I did. That's okay, I can Google you.
I think we're looking at a few national champions, a few gold medals, and two national.
We're over. Go ahead,
What do we
Pete.
got?
Continue on. He said we gotta Google it. So we gotta Google it.
Google it.
Sorry, I took us off track. That's my fault. Let's bring us back. I'm sorry.
By the way, in case you didn't know, there's some competitive people up here. So, you went here a little bit, Daryl, and I want to explore this a little bit. This idea of technology and how technology connects with brand and how you think about that. Joe, as you think about technology, social media, general technology, how does that play into your life, into your brand, into how you operate on a day-to-day basis?
No, I was just thinking about, it was making me laugh when Daryl was talking because he's over here with the Super Bowl rings. Meanwhile, I'm thinking about how the other day, last week, I was playing Twitch with a lot of different fans. So it's a video game streaming service, and you're playing video games with your fans and interacting with them. And it's just a completely different, I mean, it's obviously a different time, but it's one of those things where it's fun for us as athletes, too, to be able to engage with people off of the court, but you get to do it all the time now and in different ways, whether it be Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, however you want to interact with Facebook Live. I mean, there's so many different avenues where you can engage with your fans, and then the fact that you can play video games with them is just something that completely different when you guys were playing.
Did you play video games against your fans when they ate
Atari. The little
Take me through your decision process in terms of, and I don't know how you manage your social presence.
Yeah.
Like, take me through your decision process, how you think about it, what you tweet, what you don't.
Yeah,
how
I mean,
that
it's
all
really
works.
interesting because, we're talking about athletes having a voice, and obviously that's an unbelievable platform to do that. But then you're also seeing, I think of JJ Redick recently just deleted all of his social media platforms. And he had made a pretty valid point to saying that the negatives with everything that was happening on there didn't outweigh the positive for him. And he felt like he could impact, in other ways versus having to constantly be on social media. So it's one of those things where it is kind of how you decide to look at it. There is a lot of positives from it, and I think, for some people, a lot of just the negative energy that's kind of going on there It is an avenue for, if I have a bad game, I heard it last night. I mean, I didn't shoot particularly well, and I've heard about it, not only from my coach, but from a lot of Brooklyn Nets fans. So it's one of those things that you kind of, if you can take it with a grain of salt and just view the positive, there is a lot of good that can come out of it for sure. And I think it is one of those things we talk about, trying to be more marketable and getting people to understand you as a person and having that authenticity, and a lot of that can come, through your social media.
And you watch it. You see what those responses. You see.
Yeah, I personally am not the most active on it. I have a camp that I run, a nonprofit camp that I run every year in my hometown, and I use it to advertise for that. So my Twitter is basically just for the camp itself. I recently got Instagram. I actually had it when I was in Cleveland, and built up a following there. Decided to just completely get rid of it, and then literally a couple of months ago decided to kind of come back on it. I think just the maturity level and being able to, because when I was in Cleveland, I didn't do a good enough job at handling sort of the negativity that kind of came with it. And I think as I've sort of matured, it's easier for me now, and I look at it more as a platform to have a voice, to have an impact, have people get a chance to kind of get a sense of who I am and support the philanthropic things that I'm wanting to do.
Love it.
Yeah.
So I'll take it from like a business standpoint of like
absolutely.
the NBA and the NBPA, the union. I think the NBA has done a phenomenal job out of all leagues in regards to growing their brand globally and using technology to do that. I think the players have embraced it because the players understand, NBA and WNBA, that's their direct voice to their fan base. And as you grow your fan base, we all know now that sponsors are paying different players to, whether it's to tweet out something or to post an ad. So that's another way that you can be able to make money in that regard. But from an NBA perspective, the NBA understands the impressions. They have the analytics to everything. They've invested in it. And that's why you recently saw e-gaming come on board. And that's why you saw this new league that happened. And everybody's like, well, what is the NBA? What is this gaming that's happening? Shout out to the Knicks gaming. They actually won. So that was, you guys should really be clapping for that, trust me.
2K, right?
But yeah, they won the 2K. Yeah, the 2K, and I was actually there for the first ever draft. So it's really crazy to be an athlete and to be talking about athletes, well, gamers who are supposed to be playing this game, and how does your brain wrap around the idea, but they are in their own space and have their own following. And so you're creating a way for your sport to continue to grow in this e-gaming space. And so the technology is there, like you were saying, Joe. The following, that's how you bring more people who may not be athletes, but they're gamers. And when you understand your business model and how you're going to grow and you're strategic about it, that's when you see the progression that's happening. And also one other thing I just want to throw in there, I work with the NBA on social responsibility. And the one thing I can say about the league itself and the union and the WNBA is that they are progressive and they are proactive and not reactive. And what I mean by that is they see what's coming, they're talking to the employees, the body, which is the players, and understanding that either you're going to make sure that you're getting in the community, you're making sure that you're addressing these social injustice issues and things of that sort, because if you don't want individual people being able to speak for you. You want to have a clear voice from the top. And once they did that, it shut everything else down from having people try to get at whether it was LeBron or Kobe or this person and this person. And so I just give them credit because I think when you're proactive like that in your business, especially in the era that we live in right now, and when technology, any player can just pop off and say anything, it really shows how having a collective voice is so important.
Love it. So running low on time, can we do last shots? So I'm just curious from all of you, just sort of as you think about this world of brands and technology and sports, and you sort of think about moving forward, what do you think? What are the big things you're thinking about, Marcy? What is Google thinking about moving forward in terms of what's going to happen in that intersection and where things are headed?
Sure. So I think where we want to continue to help the leagues that we work with directly is certainly, I think, and Swin touched on this a little bit about the content that the NBA specifically produces. So being able to monetize their YouTube channel and monetize the great content that they do have, while also helping to help them market with our ad product side of the business. You talked a lot about data and how you feel like you guys have like you have your full-on analytics team. So I think that's where Google Cloud comes into play, et cetera. Now I'm just like throwing product names at you guys, but more specifically, I think the intersection of technology is just, I think, again, goes back to providing utility to consumers to be able to do what they want to do.
Yep.
And we all know that we're, glued to our phones, and we're constantly using them for everything. And our expectations as sports fans, as users, are very high. So being able to, as a technology company such as Google, being able to work alongside brands and the sports league specifically to make sure that we're constantly making their fans, their consumers' lives easier is really, is really what we want to continue to do. And I think there's a lot that we're going to continue to see grow in the space of streaming services. And if leagues are going to start to, we talked about 2K League specifically, and these really interesting ways that you can connect with with fans. Is it owning your own streaming services and being able to deliver games that way, in addition to linear TV, et cetera. So I think, YouTube TV, et cetera, ways such as that. So I think that's, where we kind of are being led by the fans and by the consumers, and want to make sure that we're providing utility in that way for them.
Love it. Yeah, what are you excited about moving forward?
I'm excited about the reality of the whole social media and the capabilities that we have. I also, again, I would stand in my own authentic self. I would be concerned about making sure that whether it's Russia doing something or it's a little 2-year-old or 5-year-old, that we protect everybody in this process, because it's not going to go away. It's going to continue to be a part of the history of our world, but let's become better at it every day. At night as I listened to Joe speak, I was thinking about some nights all the way midnight, I'll just respond to people on Twitter. I won't respond to anything that they say negative. I just act like I didn't see it and just go to the one that say something positive. Right. But I like that. I like interacting with people, but you have to drive. You have to be a responsible user of the technology, whether you're a corporation or an individual. And if we get better at that as a nation, as a people, I think it's just a great medium for us, whether it's marketing or just communicating with people, protecting people. I have a security system in the house. My technology, I can see my front door.
Right.
Dude's at my door. Hey, man, what's up? I'm not home. So technology is here and it's important.
Yeah. Hashtag no one's home.
Well, we've got to become better at it, and I'm okay with that. I think we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
And so I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Joe, what do you think? What are you excited about moving forward?
Yeah, Swin was talking just about the NBA and how they've been an extremely progressive league, especially from the leadership standpoint. Adam Silver has been on board and kind of at the forefront of a number of things, especially with the intersection of tech. Obviously the e-gaming is huge. They've started talking about getting involved with sports gambling and somehow incorporating that into the NBA. And I think it's just an exciting time to be a part of a league that has leadership like that has leaders individually, players that are progressive in their own sense and have such strong voices in their local communities, but also national and international communities. It's just a great time to be a part of the NBA, and so I'm just excited to be kind of riding the wave with everything that's going on.
Love it. Swin, last word. What are you excited about?
Last word, what I'm excited about, I'm excited about women. I'm excited about the opportunity for women in sports, women in tech. I'm excited for women across our country to have a voice, to have a platform, and to be at the table, to be engaged at the table in boardrooms, in classrooms across the country. I'm excited for men who are allies of women, and I'm excited that the next generation will see a movement that is fierce, that's unapologetic and that is strong. And I think that every young girl will have an opportunity that a lot of women in here maybe didn't have, but will have as we move forward.
Awesome.
Can't imagine can't imagine a better way to end.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank our panelists for being here today. Sharing their wisdom. So thank you guys very much for your time and your perspectives. And so.